So I'm going to start out, as I often do, with a scrub in using burnt sienna. I'm using burnt sienna on this painting because the horse that I'm painting is a light bay, and the burnt sienna color pretty much is the same as the base coat of the horse. So I'm going for main shapes first. And just scrubbing it in. This is just paint right out of the tube with the bristle brush, scrubbing it into all the white areas in the canvas, the little white specks that will show through if I don't fully get the paint in there. And I use this method instead of a drawing because it's easier to assess main shapes and make decisions as you go along than it is to get into the confines of lines. I mean, if you're copying something exactly, perhaps lines, you know, if you're graphing it up or something like that, lines can work. But if you're doing something where you might be changing the original photo a bit, this gives you a little more leeway. Helps you correct photo distortion because you start to rely on the shape that you see in front of you and judge whether that is correct or not. Rather than just looking at lines as confining your shapes. This quickly gets the main position in. Helps with deciding if you're the right distance from the edge of the canvas. Helps you figure out your proportions. And in some cases like this, I'm already seeing that I've got this little bump a little too large. I could adjust it now if it was bothering me, but I probably will adjust it a little bit more with the outline once I get the rest of the shapes in, just to give myself lots of options in terms of where exactly I think it should be placed. So once I get the main horse's head shaped in here, I'm going to dip into a mixture that I've made of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna because that's like a black. I don't need to clean my brush because it's already got burnt sienna in it. And I'll just scrub in areas where this horse is a bit darker as a means of just refining my drawing. And again, things like the placement of the eye, I can put that in just a large shape so that I can refine it later rather than trying to get the placement exactly right. Throw in a few shadow shapes before I start working on the lighter areas. Then I will pick up a Q-tip and begin to refine my shapes a little bit, wiping out areas in the horse that are lighter. A Q-tip has one hard side and one soft side, so those two can come in handy at different times. The soft one for wiping out larger shapes, and the hard one when you start refining a little bit more. It's looking very basic at this point, but that's the idea. We don't want to get into details when we haven't got our shapes established. It's very easy to go back in with burnt sienna if I've got too much dark in there. Add more dark if I want it. Starting to get into a few more exacting details, but still just main shapes. Making sure all along that I've got everything placed where I want it. Checking one space against the next and one shape against the next. Checking the alignment of where the eye fits under the ear, whether the ear's in the right place, things like that. I can use a dampened Q-tip if I feel like I want to outline my edge a little bit more. I'm working with a water-soluble oil, so I would just dampen it with a little bit of water. It removes, for instance, here, if I just go along the edge. And sometimes I'll go along with a dry Q-tip first, just to make sure I'm in the right spot, but that's what I mean about using a dampened Q-tip to refine the edge. You can go back and forth. And this block-in, scrub-in stage takes a fair amount of the time. When I teach a workshop in person, the scrub-in stage will often take the whole first day in a 2-day workshop, because it's really important that you get all your placement correct at that point. It's no use putting in details if you aren't sure that you've got everything in the right place. It's also a good idea to step back and look from a distance. Make sure you like what you're seeing, because we're not going to be viewing typically paintings from really close up. And also a distant look will help you make sure you're not missing something. In this case, I'm kind of standing sideways because of my camera, so it doesn't hurt me to check from a little further back in case I'm getting a bit of a distorted view by being off to the side. Just going around and slowly refining, adding and taking away. One of the spots where the harder edge of the Q-tip is going to work better. This one's a little mushy. I also have some pointed makeup tips that I can use if I've got a really fine line to do. For the most part, you really don't need these, but they do help if you're wanting to do sort of a little drawing in a given area. I apologize for the traffic noise. I'm right by my front window and they've rerouted some traffic here and I've got quite a few people driving by this morning.